Welcome, everyone, to this beautiful and blessed Wednesday, the 5th of April, as I welcome a very sacred, dear soul family of my heart into the show today, someone that I personally know and someone that I admire. I've known him for a number of years, and he has a lot of incredible wisdom to share. And I'm very excited that he accepted this invitation to come and bring that blessing from his lens of ascension to us. So I welcome all of you. Please welcome dear sacred Ronnie Landis to this Ascension Hour. So Ronnie, welcome, sweetheart.
Thank you so much, honey. It's an absolute pleasure, privilege, and honor to be here with you and everybody that's listening or watching. Really happy to reconnect with you. It's been a long time, and we've known each other for many, many moons and many cycles and many revolutions around the sun, this life and past, I'm sure. So just really honored to be here with you.
As I am as well. And I thank you for the accepting of my invitation today. And it couldn't have been more perfect because it is past this spring equinox, and we have a lot to share as both of us have experienced quite a bit once again. So before we start this whole Ascension Hour, let us just all relax back. As usual, we're going to go ahead and just create this sacred container so that we can receive what is going to be shared here. So let us sit back and close our eyes for a moment. Let's place our hands on our heart. Let us just relax and breathe into that sacred heart and really connect with the gracious essence of that dazzling crystalline heart and that purity flame that is inside, that gives us the ability to see through the lens of the great I am. Let us just breathe into that, breathe into its divine love. As I welcome all of you now to breathe in from this horizontal plane into this space and hold your breath as you drop in deeper into the center of your own divine love, so that it knows you are here to be hearted and heard. And release the breath. And let us draw another deep in breath from this horizontal plane into that same sacred heart space, and hold the breath as you draw your attention downwards through your lower chakras, all the way down through the heart of Sophia Gaia, so that her heart knows your heart is here to connect with it, to ground this beautiful information. And release your breath. And on your next in-breath, draw the breath from this horizontal plane once again back into the center of your crystalline diamond dazzling heart. And through its love, hold your breath as you draw your attention consciously and deliberately upwards through your higher chakras, passing through all planes of consciousness, all the way towards the great central sun, and past the great central sun into the heart of the great I am, in that crystalline source. And release your breath. And finally, draw another breath from this horizontal plane. Breathe it all the way to the center of your crystalline diamond heart. And hold your breath as you recognize it is harmonized in this sacred vertical axis and horizontal axis, unified in its center, the center of its oneness. And from the love inside, the love from its source of creation, breathe it all the way out as a sphere of light. Let it extend all the way out of you, covering your physical, emotional, mental, etheric, and spiritual body. So you are completely enclosed in this gracious, dazzling, golden plasma light of divine love. And as you relax into here, you relax in trust, relax in openness and receptive. Feel to receive that in which is right for you in this moment, in this now. From the purity of the wisdom of the truth that beautiful guest Ronnie will be sharing today. All is bountiful and beautiful according to divine's holy will, and nothing less than this divine perfection will interact or interfere in any which way. And so it is, and so be it as we begin. So Ronnie, darling, welcome.
Thank you.
It's been a minute or so since we have cross path with each other, but we're always connected, and I'm very excited to hear where you are right this moment, in this present moment right now. You've arrived, especially after the equinox, in this moment. As I have arrived from this incredible metamorphosis, and this now is very different than the nows that I have seen. What is your now right now that you like to begin with?
Yeah, such a powerful question. I think I feel my now is one of increased stability, certainty, solidarity within myself, myself being the I am presence, the soul self, and then the human self, and both of those feeling more integrated and more embodied and more unified than ever. Of course, I have my moments of humanness that feel maybe a little more messy or disorganized or separated, just like we all go through the reverberations back and forth, between identity crisis and identity clarity. And I think that's part of the process too of as you call ascension or inscension, personal evolution, is that we're moving through the different dimensional structures of our own identity. And then there's so much that we can dive into just on that concept, but that's a lot of what I've moved through in my own personal spiritual journey. And then I feel in this moment I'm getting ready and I'm gearing up to hit the start line of the next iteration of the race, like the next game that's about to play. Yeah.
So ditto on that. Yesterday, I led the 4-4 Universal Meditation, which was unshackling the Atlantean matrix, Ronnie. And it is very much about that reclaiming of the I am. And the essence of it in this now, it is a whole different ball game. And it is a true ball game. It is a joyful ball game. And I resonate with that in which you're sharing. You can recognize, okay, here's a whole, it's not even a platform anymore. This now you've arrived. It's about to open up. It has already opened up to a whole different spectrum of it's a different game.
Yeah, it's a different game. When you said that, what came up for me is, I think Coop Blackson. He's a dear brother of mine, and he was just on my podcast recently, so it's really top of mind. He was talking about like the evolution of spirituality and how bored he is with kind of the humdrum spirituality manifestation, kind of the same old, consumer-based spirituality. And he was mentioning, he's like, this old way of manifesting, of like claiming your desire, he's like, that's an old paradigm. The new paradigm is complete surrender to what God wants for me. And I thought, like, wow, that really clicked too, because that's so much of what I'm opening up to. It's not even about me or what I want or what I think I want, because that's the best approximation that the human Ronnie has is what he thinks he wants based on the conditioning, the limitations of my own perspective of all the life experiences I have up to this point. I can only approximate what I think I want based on where I'm at and based on where I think that I can go. So I'm like, okay, how about I just surrender or practice this surrender thing to relinquish my presuppositions and give it over to God, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, couldn't be more perfect. Again, I go back to yesterday because it was so profound. This from the I was shown, Ronnie, how to literally unshackle this shackling of the old Atlantean template that for the last 12,500 years played out here, because it is operating from the mind system, because then it is all that you're speaking of, the spirituality of the manifestation comes from the human mind, which is still so limited, ties into the struggles, ties into the victim, ties into operating still from the human that's so limited. And yet this is after the equinox, what opened through this incredible expansion through within, in which is this what the soul wants to experience within the human form. It's like a whole different experience. Like, so, that this now, and I knew when, as soon as we talked, we're meeting in this place. Michael came back from Mexico. He's been away for 3 weeks. He just got back. So I warned him. I said, Michael, I entered a metamorphosis state. I said, there are going to be a lot of changes. And he's seen the cycles before. And he said, I just went through it. So we met, okay, how is this going to be now? Because it's a whole different ball game. Are you finding, my question for you, Woody, in this ball game, are you finding yourself like truly for the first time excited, Ronnie?
For the first time in a long time, for sure. I have to admit, the last few years have been incredibly enduring. With the mass psyop of 2020, and that actually brought a level of excitement in a certain way, in a sort of kind of warrior, very masculine kind of like, okay, great, now we have something to fight for, now we have a mission, now we have something real. Versus I think a lot of before that was a lot of trivial problems, a lot of trivial social media, computer interfacing, branding, like kind of this influencer type of reality. And a lot of it felt artificial. And that's so much of the world that we have been implanted into, is this very artificial, synthetic, cyberzoic, mind, and then we have this technology that we're kind of neurolinked into and our consciousness is interacting with. So I think when 2020 happened, at least it was like, okay, this is real. There's something really real happening. But then the aftermath of that trauma exercise had a huge impact on my psyche. I had a number of
I remember that.
A number of very deep ayahuasca ceremonies, which both cured me of that and also entered me into a very deep initiatory process where my sense of identity, old structures within myself had to be completely left to the wayside. And it's taken me a number of years to rebuild and restructure myself. And so there has been a lot of excitement, but it's also been met with some very intense initiations and crucibles that I feel like, to your question, I'm now fully coming out of the karmic completion of all that and now moving into like true dharma, like the true authentic nature of myself, my expression, my power, and also how that is seeking to express itself and manifest into my work moving forward. And that is pretty exciting.
Yeah. And a lot of the listeners would really relate to that, from being on this other side of it and being able to see and feel and know the divine perfection of the last couple of years with the pandemic, and how that was so part of our next level of initiation, a true massive
Yeah.
global initiation for us to merely choose, not just on a human
Mm,
plane, but on a soul plane, connected again to this, to the knowing of the I am, but how can the I am actually
mm,
be viscerally experienced so many of us can move into the embodiment in alchemizing what ascension is. And that has been a very interesting internal journey to be a witness in ourselves. And with that comes
right.
the massive amount of letting go and the many identities and identities and identities tied to, you've written book, I've written, or you have so many books to read, like all of that, like beautiful, all on the wayside, because it's like this, there is there's
Mm,
Ronnie here, there's Ronnie here, there's Ronnie here, there's Ronnie here. There are
yeah.
different Ronnie that want to do, and then it's like the multidimensional Ronnie in acceptance
Mm,
of its fragmented self coming back home.
wow.
It wants to express itself right now. And this one does not have a structure per se. It's like a, are you
Mm,
finding that it's a, because are you finding it's like a, it doesn't need structure? Are you in that place? Like, because I've been really in it, like,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this wants to really be in its true freedom.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, you reflected that so beautifully. So I mean that touches me a certain way. And obviously you're deep and very adept at the metamorphic alchemical process of transformation. And so I mean, yeah, it's interesting because I'm coming into a stage of creating more structure,
Mm.
but co-creating the structure from from an aligned place. Obviously, I think there's unique differences between the polarity of masculine and feminine and how those two dance, and we obviously have both inside of us, but as a predominantly masculine man,
Yeah.
I think structure and organization and order are very important, but a lot of that had to be dismantled because a lot of it was coming from the ego mind, which did serve me at a certain point because that was a prior identity, a prior life expression. So that did serve me, but then it had to be dissolved and undone in order for God to re-stitch me back together,
Yep.
to
Yep.
restructure me. So then it's kind of like now the vessel has been cleared out to a certain extent. There's always more. And
Mhm.
now there's a restructuring happening where the autonomic nervous system itself is going through an upgrade of its operating capacity, where before the old structure would have confined this energy, call it light frequencies, biophotons, nervous system capacity, nerve force, all whatever you want to call it scientifically, it's all valid. It's all really what's happening for all of us. The physical vessel, which is combined with the spirit, the soul force, they both have to operate together in unison. The nervous system had to go through a somatic trauma release and order to be able to hold the capacity of the soul.
Mhm.
That's the best way I can articulate it, and
Yeah.
that's what I feel like my actual work is about
Yeah.
with nervous system optimization and understanding the deeply layered imprints of emotional deposits in psychological trauma that get stored in the physical nervous system. And we repeat these memory signatures from the past as if they're happening in the moment. We call that a trigger or a sympathetic arousal, like a memory unlocks and we experience it as if it's happening in the moment. And we have to be able to surrender or go through whatever therapy process to undo those held structures of trauma, so the new can essentially be reborn. That in a nutshell is basically my experience.
There's something you said, Ronnie, so important that I want to just come back to. You said many, many important things, but this particular one, the structure and this, the expression of the masculine template and the feminine template, and as through this, what's open after this beautiful spring equinox in the access to the divine self. Truly, it is harmonized so much within, because the structure that, like, I'm a very organized, structured, I'm going to say I was organized, very structured individual, and I thrive in that. I love that structure and all of that. And before this, Ronnie, I really saw that structure, so on the outside, was not the way the divine self, the I am, wanted to express itself. So as you've gone through your restructuring, the true structure that I'm speaking of, where it doesn't have a structure anymore, is because inside you restructured where you are, where your template is capable now to allow the I am, or God, source, to be housed in. And from here is an organic flow in its expression. It is no longer the structure in which the way we had been operating from. And that's a huge part of the Atlantean template that we're to move out of, because that template is the one that could be easily manipulated, controlled, psyched, socially engineered. I mean, you and I know very well about that. But the way it does, because it's plugged into the mind of the man or the human. And when that is literally unplugged because of the restructuring, because the nervous system knows divine codes. And when the divine codes are coming online through that restructuring, it just is. And it doesn't repeat cycles. So then it becomes an organic expression of it in perfect, like in such a perfect way that before, all the fantastic things we did and we structured it, program, put it, they were great. But my goodness, like the salivation of taste that I'm having in its expression, this is really juicy in the way this is like a whole different ball game. And that's what I'm excited about, like really excited about. Yeah.
That's so beautifully put. What I feel from everything that I was hearing is like this rising of the feminine impulse, the feminine force, the feminine principle, and that not being isolated to the woman. And this is another thing, as you were talking, for some reason language is coming up, like his story, human. And I was like, wait, where's the, like, that's not, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but but that's an interesting energetic to just that I'm feeling from you. And I'm also in like your ecstasis and that the beauty of the woman, the feminine, in her joy and ecstasis. And that can only happen when the feminine is safe and secure, grounded, it feels protected, all the things that we associate as like the masculine does for the woman, like in kind of polarity talk. But I'm taking it more like more quintessence, more like the actual essence of the life force itself. And that, to me, it's interesting because I feel like a part of me might have been afraid of that for some unknown reason. I have no idea, but I think it was just more like my overt masculine energy that had to operate a particular way, like the straight and the narrow, like, nope, I need to be on my path and this and that. Like, I like to have fun and all that, but like I'm a man, like I need, it's structured, it's linear, it's all that. And now I really feel like ultimately all I really want is to have fun.
Yeah.
And fun and joy and happiness can look a lot of different ways. It doesn't always look like me with a smile. I can still be happy and sad simultaneously. Like they both can coexist.
Period.
So like this feminine, the feminine impulse that's rising is really, to me, symbolizes it really symbolizes this energy of liberation and freedom that's seeking to emerge in the world.
So beautiful, because ultimately, Ronnie, if I don't know if you have in your where you are in this now, you're experiencing, because it was never about the male form or the female form, it was the energies of both for us to experience its light and its shadow inside and really get to know it, really get to discover it on this ascension walk, and have that authentic personal experience with it, and its heaviness and its joy, its satisfaction, pleasure, and its sort of like disaster, all of those, so that it unifies with, it's that ultimate unification, the ultimate marriage is inside. And when it is unified within, in that uniforce, unifield, there is no more masculine and feminine. It's just an expression that is ever expressing. It doesn't even have those anymore. It goes kind of out the door, because that it needed it for it to be resurrected to that point, and it for it to be in its true freedom. So and that freedom is it's like we incarnated just to experience this freedom. Here it is.
Mm.
This is like, this is so good, because no one was ever designed to give you that, make you feel safe. It's no one's responsibility. You and I have experienced quite a bit of traumas, and we went through, controlling our lives in ways to protect the trauma. And it was mostly the pain, the hurt, right? So once we really met it, and it took a long journey, just like many of our viewers watching, it took us so much courage to meet the pain. And we met it, we ran away from it, we hid it, we escaped it, we did everything with it, until it was time, divine time, that we could really meet it with love, so we can resurrect ourselves and free ourselves from our own invisible prison. Nobody else did it, and no one can. I remember it wasn't too long ago, Ronnie, I told Michael, I said, Michael, you are not responsible in making me feel safe. It is my responsibility. It is not your role. And my gosh, I have taken part in me finding safety in you, and you finding safety in me. No, and this safety can only come from our inside, the God within, the source within. No, we release that. Like, no, there's just no more.
Well, that brings up an interesting point when it comes to conscious relationships, right? Because it's a yes and, isn't it? It's like, because as a conscious, responsible, and healthy, loving human being, obviously I want my female partner to feel safe. Therefore, I'm going to operate in a way that's authentic.
Yes.
Because if it's my truest desire, that's going to be also part of my devotion and discipline, and part of how I express myself. It's not contrived in any way. I think that's kind of what you're pointing out, is like, it's not an obligation. It's a natural emanation of my true desire. Therefore, that influences my decision making, because a relationship is two people. It's not each person, I'm whole and you're whole. It's like, yeah, we are in our wholeness, but it's a spiral. It's an ever evolving thing. Just like what you mentioned with Michael coming back, and you're like, hey, just want to let you know, I'm changing, I'm evolving, I'm dying and rebirthing. There's going to be some changes that are made.
A new butterfly.
Right. Right.
Let's fly together.
Right. And that's the beautiful thing. And that's when we, as men in particular, are able to, like, really, I don't even know if surrender is the right word. I think it's just relax. just relax into that natural polarity dance, knowing that that is actually the juice. That's what we love about the feminine. But we don't see it very often. So we don't have a lot of reference points for it. And I think that's part of the recoding and retemplating process of our own conditioning in our own nervous system, is that we need to re-entrain ourselves to what a healthy relationship actually feels like, because we probably never actually felt it.
Because we never experience it in ourselves, that ultimate healthy relationship. Again, I feel, I don't know if you're experiencing, it's like all the directions are pointing back within. That
Totally.
ultimate relationship is you. And again, it's no one's responsibility. And that is the ultimate liberation, when you authentically dare to take that response, and with your ability that comes with that divine will, that blue flame comes in, like it's time. That means I can't make excuses no more, and all of that. It is calling home.
Mm.
That the relation within, the relation with the organs, the relation with the emotions, the relations with the thoughts, the relations with this house of God in here. So before to anyone else.
Powerful.
And that is what it's a great one, because this in embodiment allows us to operate very differently, whether we have another pandemic, let's say.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
Ultimately,
Right.
right? All kinds of things. And now we have, like, let's say, the incredible, I've done a few videos around AI and the taking off an AI this summer. Like, it's already come in, and most of our spiritual friends in our community have no clue. Yet it's very interesting, that dynamic. So
It's
where are you with your ascension and AI, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I think there could be a longer conversation and exploration into that.
Yeah.
I don't have a fixed position on it. I've studied it for many years. I've gone down, multiple timelines of AI as a concept, and
Yeah.
then looking at AI as a practical reality.
Well, from
And
an ascension perspective.
well, I think there's a positive and negative polarity to this and so AI, in my opinion. Well, let me pause for a second, because it's not a simple conversation, because there are multiple frames of reality that are all embedded into what we call artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of ideas around it. There is a Luciferic impulse that is embedded into the AI template,
Mhm.
and that has to be well understood, because with any technology, it's being piloted by beings that have a certain consciousness, that have motives and intentions for how to use the technology.
Yep.
And I don't, and AI in of itself, there's different ideas, and I'm not going to get too deep into it. Like,
But
it's
just yours, I want to know your
yeah,
direct.
I'm trying to, I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to land the plane, because I don't have a fixed opinion. I think I'm somewhat neutral to it, because I see it as part of the grander architecture, because this is happening. So inevitably it's part of the grander architecture. I do feel that the challenge with it is the same challenge I see with most people. People are easily addicted. They're easily hijackable. Their dopamine systems are easily primed towards immediate gratification, instant validation, easy solutions, quick fixes. So the same way that I've seen people get wrapped up in social media, and that become their virtual alternate reality, because the brain doesn't have a context between what's real or what's not. So if somebody's watching pornography or social media, or they're watching YouTube videos or whatever, their brain can interpret that as a part of reality. and then they become addicted to that virtual reality versus the reality of your five senses and what you can taste, touch, smell, and sense in front of you. That's the challenge that I am conscientious of, is our ability to distinct between what's real and organic and what's synthetic and inorganic. And that is obviously the agenda of the technocratical, transhumanism agenda, which is a Luciferic agenda, which is to strip spirit strip spirit from matter. So nothing really matters. Is it because it's all matter? There's no living, sentient, organic life force in it anymore. And that's a huge part of an agenda. But I'm aware of that. I don't put too much into it, but it's obviously, I see it rolling out and I see people just going along with it. And then I also see beings like you, me, and everyone that's on an authentic ascension healing journey, which is like, no, I actually want to get real. I want to get connected to what's real, what's authentic, what's true, and I want to go down that path. And so I see both the timelines converging, and I also think that AI, just like all technologies, can be used for benevolent or malevolent purposes. That's basically where I'm at with all that.
Love it. Oh, so much. Did you know this word transhumanism? It's so fascinating when I received this from my higher self in meditation. This transhumanism is actually a so we went through this in Atlantis, Ronnie, where as human species, we were part of this heart center consciousness. And then the sort of like the mind developed a little bit more, and there was that separation from divinity. And a true trans, with a capital T, not this T. The true transhumanism is when the human is transcended to its divine essence. And of course, right now with the technology that is using it, because it doesn't have its own power, because it is not coming from the divine self, it is attempting to transhumanize through an artificial way. You see, but there is a true transhuman, where it's like a superhuman, because we already are gifted with this. So most don't know that. The other part of this, what is very fascinating, is that with AI, like right now we're using this technology, and with what we know to be true, again, capital T, we are able to bring our authentic divine expression that surpasses any of malevolent, because it becomes like almost like a little dust. It has no power. And many in the light community, spiritual community, because they're not grounded fully in their bodies from their divine truth, they will be manipulated, controlled, programmed, augmented, social engineered, because it's not that they use discernment, because the frequency will match it. Simply that, and that too is part of their experience. They came to experience, so they can resurrect that and come to their authentic. That also opportunity exists in there. For those of us that are able to see it viscerally, we are not going to be caught in it. However, we recognize its consciousness is matching the consciousness in its speed. And it's like it's like a whole different side of seeing it. It's like, okay, welcome AI, because there are a lot of greatness amongst the not greatness that is also operating. just as a spin. And it's an amazing opportunity for us to really exercise the divine heart
Mm,
and the divine mind in the oneness of it, not in its separation. And that's that incredible opportunity. And I wanted to ask you because I'm getting so many messages from people, all like fear, oh my gosh, AI, this, that, and I'm just like, yeah, bring it on. Like it's fun,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
perfect. Like it's perfect actually. Don't go into fear. It's perfect. It is part of this.
sure, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you for taking time and addressing that because that's a big one. That's a big one right now in our ascension walk. And I want to also ask you about your ascension walk regarding your level of truly loving you, Ronnie.
Mm,
How has that really taken a more of a priority in your like awareness and how much of it and what are some of the ways that you're really truly loving you like and you're aware no I never loved myself this way and I've been creating a lot of space and loving me truly loving me.
mm. Yeah, it's a beautiful question. It's interesting. I mean, I think there's a difference between um, self-care and self-maintenance.
Yeah.
And I think that it was easy for me to get those two things confused a bit, like maintaining myself, like through my diet and nutrition and supplementation, and through my health practices, through my fitness routines, working out. Like I'm loving myself, right? And that certainly is part of like loving ourselves in order to maintain. If you love something, part
Mhm.
of it is maintaining it, obviously. But that wasn't the whole picture. And then
So glad you made that distinction for the audience. Thank you.
yeah, I think that's one, especially as men, we often overlook and misunderstand. And
Thank you.
there's a deeper aspect of self-love. And for me, a lot of it has been going to do medicine ceremonies when it called me,
Yeah.
and taking the space to really go into those initiations and go all in, really go all in into the depths of my own trauma, my own wounding, to feel everything that there was to feel, and then really to love the process of feeling,
Mm,
regardless of what it felt like or how uncomfortable it was, but to really feel my way through my own
mm,
experience, which allowed me to take responsibility for my experience because I was no longer disconnected or numbed from it. So there
mm,
was no ability to project, which is not something I consciously would want to do, but it almost becomes a placeholder. If one is not able to connect with those parts of themselves, then will unconsciously try to project or connect to someone outside of us that fills in those holes. That's usually trauma bonding in relationships that tends to happen, right? I've been through plenty of that.
yep.
And so like really reconnecting to those aspects of myself and going into different processes. And so how does that look like for me? It looks in different ways. I mean, part of it is just feeling, like I said, like just feeling my way through my own experience and actually taking responsibility for my experience is a high form of self-love because I'm the only one that can heal me.
Yeah.
And really beyond that, actually, you realize actually it's God that heals me. But if I am a child of God, then that means that God lives within me. I make an important distinction for the spiritual community. I'm not God and neither are you. That's a very important thing we need. But some people are like, oh, we're all gods. Okay, no, 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 no. I don't think that's the
You're an
case, right?
expression of God in
Yeah.
form.
Yeah, just like we are certainly genetically in some ways expressions of our physical parents, right? But so on that deep primordial level, I am a child of God. Acknowledging that and deepening into that is a high form of self-love, because then it starts to order my behavior and my moral compass and my value system, so I can act, think, and emote in a way that is in alignment with the truth of myself. And it's interesting now that I mentioned, I haven't thought about this, but it's just kind of like top of consciousness. Now that I mention this, to me, I feel like the most loving thing that any of us can do is come into alignment and congruency with who and what we really are, which is that I am a child of God. And as a child, I am always learning. So there's an innate humility and vulnerability in
And
that,
compassion.
passion and
Yeah.
care with that. And there's also an immense amount of power
Yeah.
that comes with that. So that's kind of that's like the gist of it, I'd suppose. There's plenty of things like Epsom salt bath and saunas and and nervous system regulation and these kind of things, but at the quintessence of that informs the quality of everything I do. It's who I'm being in every moment. It's not just what I'm doing. And I think that's the distinction from like the self-maintenance and the self-love or self-care. The self-care is like the feminine principle, which is about being. And the maintenance is the masculine, which is about doing. And when the two come into harmony, then now something really amazing happens. And that's more than less where I've been arriving at.
Nice. So beautiful. I love that you made those distinctions and communicated all of that. Just so fantastic. I have, this is again more recently, Ronnie. I've always been very in touch with my feelings and all of that. However, to feel like really feel viscerally in my body is very new. So whatever choice, whether it's a food I want to take or picking up a phone or responding to anything, or as I mean, like the core visceral experience in my body, what that feels like, it's very new at this place. And I was having this conversation in my call, and when he was in Mexico, he said, "Wow, honey, I experienced the same. It's like a whole new, like I was feeling before, okay, I feel like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna feel I'm gonna do this. However, it's like a different feeling." Again, for him, it's been after the equinox. It's like I'm experiencing a different feeling that is so in my body. It's like this is like a different communication with it. It's like all the cells are unified, are saying this, which is very different. And I was very pleased that he's experiencing the same, because again, in dynamics, when we are in unions, when we go through changes, the union goes through the changes.
Right.
And that's an interesting dance. And I know you're in a union for the past year. There's, a lot, we've been 7 years, like there's the union of, because it becomes a dance, how when two go through, or maybe one goes through, the other one doesn't go through, or the other one comes there. Like it's fascinating to be a witness of that, and also what comes up in that space that possibly are some of these older energies that find a way to be seen through that dynamic, because it's held in a space of love, and now it can be seen and then decided which direction it's going to go. So are you finding that with your beloved?
Of course.
Yeah, of course you are.
Of course. I
If you
mean,
want to share anything about that before we wrap up in the
yeah,
sixth
I mean,
ascension walk.
you said it so perfectly, and those are so much of the mechanics or dynamics within sacred union. And what I've just continued to come to realize is that there's me, there's her, and then there's the relationship itself. And the more that I individuate those three things, like the Holy Trinity, the man, the woman, and the Holy Spirit, then it actually makes it a lot easier, especially for my male brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't think that I'm exalted or evolved. Sure, like I have many experiences of that, and both her and I, we have our exalted, fully conscious, fully online self, and we have our human self. And the two are much closer together because there's been much more space for integration. But the relationship itself is its own entity. Like it's like the holy matrimony. Traditionally they put
Holy child.
and that I think the what do you call it, the bracelet, its symbol is like three threads. So the man, the woman, then the third symbolizes God's, like God in the union. And I think that is critically important, is that God is in the union. God brought it together, and God can take you apart as well. And so, I have my part in it. She has her part. And then there's the relationship, and it has its own intelligence. So it's like tracking the rhythms and the ebbs and the flows, and kind of tracking it from an energetic forecast versus, oh, you're doing this, you're feeling this, I'm feeling this, and we get wrapped up in our human drama. And that, I think that's where this contraction expansion starts to happen versus, just paying attention to the energetic forecast and then having a conversation from it from an observer perspective to the best you can, and just kind of, checking the weather and then responding accordingly. That's been a lot of the lessons. There's been many deaths and rebirths. So it's interesting the way that you framed it, because we've broken up multiple times, in our relationship. Broken up, yeah, right, like that, the human ego self. But we could never stay away from each other for too long, and we were always trying to find the right orientation, because a lot of times we felt like we were magnetized to each other, but things weren't working, and there was a new foundation and a new structure that needed to be recreated. We thought within the relationship, oh, the relationship isn't working. The relationship's working just fine. It's the alchemy is working just fine, but the individuals are going through a restructuring that we couldn't do for each other. And that was an important thing. One last thing I'll say about this, that a friend of mine mentioned the other day, it really clicked. She said, you have the 5 love languages. There's a 6th love language that nobody talks about, and the 6th love language is space.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, that is true, because one of the challenges that we had continued to face was because we are so magnetized to each other, and we're so good with each other, and we can go on all kinds of adventures and portals and psychedelic experiences, and just like we're so tapped in. We would have so many peak state experiences, but there wouldn't be as much individual integration after the peak state. It's like when you go into a medicine ceremony or any powerful experience in your life, there needs to be a space to integrate the energy. And if there isn't that space, then it doesn't come into form. It gets very, things can get very confusing. And so that's a lot of the lessons that we've moved through.
That's fantastic. Ronnie, I'm smiling because many from their human self want a divine union, and it's fantastic. And there's an entire different experience to walk as a divine union. And 7 years into this with Michael, and being, in a sacred marriage with each other, going through it, I would say both him and I will tell you the first couple of years, 2 or 3 years, it was literally every month. And it was always in
Yeah, every month sounds about like looking at my clock.
every month. So he can tell you literally every month It was initiated by me. That's it. You cannot be my divine partner. I'm out of here. And then he'd be like, and I would have a total shit fit. I totally would because,
Yeah.
and but what was so interesting about that, the discomfort that the union would so perfectly would bring up, and it was time for him and myself to face it. Either we could face it or we couldn't, and often we couldn't fully face it because the environment
Mm.
didn't provide the
Yes. Yes.
space for it to fully be so. And it was perfect because we had to have that experience ourselves as we assist others in their union. We have had our own realization, authentic walk of 7 years gone through. So we sit there like this with so much compassion and joy of those going. We know the turmoil around it. We also know the divine love around it. We also know that magnetic force that pulls it, what it is of purpose. We fully know, and from that, when we dare to go through these metamorphoses in
Mm.
trust, in full trust, whatever direction is going to go. You see what I mean? And that's a huge evolution in a dynamic because you go through it. Sometimes we don't want this space because we've experienced so much and we want to be together in fear this might go apart
Right. Right.
for that. And then, but this is a muscle that wants the muscle of trust coming on. And that muscle is the divine trust. It is the Holy Spirit. And wow, because the human self has been so out of touch with that, it takes so,
Mm.
it feels like it takes forever for it to be actually grounded. And then it's like, huh, okay,
So true.
beautiful. Go on a 1 month journey. Go on the things, no
Oh,
problem.
go.
You know,
Yeah.
so because and it is so fantastic, yet it comes with the price. It comes with the price of literally, and you don't have to do ayahuasca to sit with your demons.
It is
It's
an Iowa. The whole thing is an ayahuasca
the
journey. So
entire
the
thing
whole
is
thing.
the most natural, divine. Listen, this is really for any of you that are called to a divine union, the most phenomenal, natural ayahuasca you will have is being that. My good, it will, I mean, the whole purging.
Yeah.
You can ask, I mean, us, the amount of time we've thrown up, and like we have our own divine love puke bucket, because it just natural and it does it out of love. Wow.
Mm.
Wow, it's love. It's woo, this is exactly what I wanted to experience on a human level. Here
Well,
it is.
I really want to comment on the responsibility piece. This has been coming up for me a lot lately. And we want what we want, right? And this goes back to like what Coop Blackson was really getting at, like spiritual immaturity. You know, oh, I want what I want, and God's a vending machine because the law of attraction, and I just think it and I want it, and then God is there to deliver it for me. And then when it doesn't happen my way, I throw a temper tantrum and a hissy fit and act like an ungrateful, cosmic child. Like this is the immaturity of the kind of the spiritual adolescence that all of us are evolving into, like what it is to be a truly embodied spiritual adult. Oh, you froze for a second. Are you still there? Hello. Okay, apparently I am the host right now till Honey comes right back. So we are going to take a little sacred pause for those that are watching on YouTube. And Honey should be back in just a moment. We're right midway into the transmission. If you're watching, stay on with us. Honey should be back any moment. Honey, 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 where did you go? Or she probably had to reset her computer. Something happened with the connection. Well, I wish I knew who was tuning in right now. It'd be easier to communicate with all of you. And if anybody wants to communicate with me or reach out, feel free to go to my Facebook or my Instagram, Ronnie Landis, easy way to connect.